I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Jim Shannon.
Mr Deputy Speaker, thank you for calling me. Can I first of all thank Mr Speaker and the Table Office for allowing and facilitating this debate. It is indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker, with sadness but also with determination and also with commitment that I bring this matter to the House. I've spoken to the Minister of State and I'm pleased to see him in his place, and I did give the Honourable Gentleman my speech beforehand and some of the things that I'm asking for, and I think it's with that purpose we try to move forward in a way that we can address these issues. It refers to an event that took place some 48 years ago, and the reason why it's taken so long is because the inquest only happened there about 2-3 weeks ago, and I had asked for an urgent question just on the Monday after that. But we're here today with the adjournment debate, and I'm very pleased to be so. Perhaps this date is a poignant one, as we understand that the Northern Ireland Legacy Bill has come into effect, and that should be the end of the probing legacy issues. Although I am aware that the Police Ombudsman has said in her remit is to continue to investigate former police officers, which will be ongoing for a further year. And I'm unsure as to why her remit continues, but those seeking truth and justice, like those at Kingsmill and other avenues, have been told the date is passing, and perhaps the Minister of State could come back to me on that. That's one of the questions I've asked him, and I'm hoping we can get a response later on. It would appear, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the vilification of the RUC is to continue with available funding, and I find this difficult to understand when we in this party, and I believe all parties in this side of the chamber, opposed the Legacy Bill in its entirety, and yet not excluding the state bodies. My view was that government was seeking to cease these cases and not see the furtherance of any police ombudsman cases, and I'm afraid that question really has to be answered, because there is an anomaly, there is a disparity, and for those who lost loved ones at Kingsmill and elsewhere have their questions answered. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Kingsmill massacre lives in the annals of history, along with the Darkley Gospel Hall attack as the pinnacle of evil intention. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, and the doubt of others outside of this chamber and who are watching today. I want to give some details about what took place, because I think it will illustrate the evilness of man. The massacre took place on the 5th of January 1976. Just after 5:30 p.m, a red Ford Transit minibus carrying textile workers home from their work along the rural road to the Bestwick. As the bus cleared the rise of a hill, it was stopped by a man in combat uniform standing on the road and flashing a torch. The workers assumed that they were being stopped and searched by the British Army. As the bus stopped, 11 gunmen in combat uniform and with blackened faces emerged from the hedges. A man with a pronounced English accent, which perhaps maybe put at ease perhaps the driver of the bus, began talking. He ordered the workers to get out of the bus and to line up facing it with their hands on the roof. He then asked who is the Catholic in the bus, and his workmates, ever mindful of who that was, they now feared that the gunmen were loyalists who had come to kill him, tried to stop him from identifying himself. However, when Hughes stepped forward, the gunmen told him to get down the road and don't look back. The lead gunman then said, "Right," and the others immediately opened fire on the workers. The 11 men were shot.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm extremely grateful to the honourable gentleman. I think he reminds us just how wicked these events were, and I'm very grateful for the passion with which he represents his constituents on these issues. I'm very clear that these were not the actions of soldiers in a war. These were the dishonourable crimes of cowardly terrorists. And it's a matter of great regret that they have not expressed contrition, remorse, that they did not confess to these crimes and suffer the justice which they were owed.
the Minister of State for that intervention. The 11 men were shot at close range with automatic rifles, which included Armalites. It's clear, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that those 10 men were murdered because they were Protestants. That's what it was about. A total of 136 rounds were fired in less than a minute. The men were shot at waist height and fell to the ground. Some fell on top of each other, either dead or wounded. And when the initial burst of gunfire stopped, the gunmen reloaded their weapons. The order was given to finish them off. In other words, no survivors. And another burst of gunfire was fired into the heaped bodies of the workmen. One of the gunmen also walked amongst the dying men and shot each of them in the head with a pistol as they lay on the ground. Such horror, such barbarity, such evil. 10 of them died at the scene. I want to name the 10 if I can, please. John Bryans, 46 years of age. Robert Chambers, 19 years of age. Reginald Chapman, 25 years of age. Walter Chapman, 23 years of age. Robert Freeburn, 50 years of age. Joseph Lemon, 46 years of age. John McConville, 20 years of age. James McWhorter, 58 years of age. Robert Walker, 46 years of age. And Kenneth Wharton, 24 years of age. Alan Black, when he's only 32 at that time, was the only one who survived. He had been shot 18 times, and one of the bullets had grazed his head. He took that decision. I didn't even flinch, because he said if I had moved, I would have got another one. Only this time, it wouldn't have grazed my head. It would have killed him. After carrying out the shooting, the gunman calmly walked away. And shortly after, a married couple came upon the scene of the killings and began praying beside the victims. These, Mr. Deputy Speaker, are the undisputed facts of the case. However, what the inquiry has found is what was first suggested by the HET investigation in 2011, which cited that although the IRA was supposedly in ceasefire at that time, it was in fact the Provisional IRA who carried out this atrocity. The coroner in his finding had said the attack was carried out by the IRA operating under the authority of the Army Council, which had in April 1975 given wide authorisation to IRA units. It was sanctioned at the highest level by IRA terrorist scumbags. But the coroner failed to name the 3 known IRA terrorist individuals who are now deceased themselves and who carried out the killings. The coroner should have done that. It was common knowledge, but for the purposes of the coroner's report, they should have been named. And I think it's important that's put on record. It says here that he failed to name and shame at least 3 known individuals now themselves deceased, and the names were available in various media outlets, including the BBC. They used 11 weapons. 11 automatic weapons were used to kill those 10 Protestant workmen. And they were linked to 40 serious other Republican terrorist crimes in a 15-year period, including the murder of 2 paratroopers in 1974, and again in 1989 to kill Chief Superintendent Harry Breen and Superintendent Bob Buchanan. The coroner's report further found that the organisation of this attack was planned well in advance in the Republic of Ireland. And I've spoken to the Minister of State, and he was going to ask this question. And the excuse within the findings that the Garda were not asked for information that they held at the time is completely, my goodness me, is untenable, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and further makes a mockery of the current legal proceedings against the government legacy legislation, when this clear evidence of their unwillingness then and now to help with investigations is so blatant. What police organisation, in this case the Garda Síochána, would say we didn't ask us for the information, so therefore we'll not give it to you? I thought police organisations, this time, in this case the Garda Síochána, should have worked alongside the RUC and ensured that all evidence that they had was made available. And it clearly wasn't. Question to ask in relation to that. The other thing that concerns me greatly is that some of those, it appears, those 3 people who carried out the attacks, it is, and this is the second part of the questions that the Kingsmill families are asking. The coroner, and I quote, refused to disclose information provided to him and closed hearings contained in secret files by security forces. Those people, those 3 people, had their on the run certificates to give them so they could get away with their crimes of the past. And it grieves me greatly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to have to record the heartache and the pain that the families feel because some of them have got off, and why and how could that be the case? And the other one that I want to ask the Minister as well, because it's really important that we do so, simply because there are just so many questions to be asked. The findings do omit, however, is any discourse on the perpetrators, when it was said in South Armagh at the time that the dogs in the street knew who carried this atrocity out, this Kingsmill massacre, the murder of 10 Protestant innocent people. Indeed, it is widely held that the perpetrators carry the on-the-run letters, and while some elected members have publicly joked, and I can think of one in particular, he joked with the loaves of Kingsmill bread on the anniversary. The families do not laugh. They carry the pain. Some of the families today wonder why this massacre received nothing like the results of other investigations resulting in prosecutions. I make this point to the Minister of State, and I've spoken to him beforehand. Why is it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that this was planned in the Republic of Ireland, was carried out from the jurisdiction of the Republic of Ireland, and they were able to cross the border with impunity, and then the Garda Síochána didn't seem to do anything in relation to that? The Minister of State will know my own personal case, and indeed everyone in this House probably knows it. My cousin Kenneth was murdered by the IRA as well.
If the honourable member wishes to take a time to compose himself, I'm quite happy to wait for him to do that. There's no pressure on him whatsoever. I know how emotional this is to him and indeed to the House. So I'm quite happy for him to compose himself.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Yeah, my cousin Kenneth Smith was murdered by the IRA. 10th of December 1971. I use this as a comparison because it's true. And the 3 people who killed him escaped across the border. The same as the IRA men, the 11 of them who killed the 10 Protestants at Kingsmill. There's a question to be answered. There's a day of justice. I'm a believer, as you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I believe that people in the next world will have their justice, and we will have justice. But I'd like to see the justice happening for the families in this world, and that's what I wish to see. So on behalf of the Kingsmill families, I want to ask those questions. Why were the Garda Síochána not forthcoming? Why in the murders of the 2 police constables as well, where there's certainly, I know our party has asked these questions in the past about justice for them as well. So I've heard the cries for a public inquest, and it's very clear from what they've said that they want to see that. And I think it's right, very right, that request should be forthcoming. And yet we know that the Legacy Bill would appear to halt this. However, as I indicated at the start of this 2 brief contribution, the Police Ombudsman has highlighted that her role is permitted to carry on for a further year. So why are the Kingsmill massacre families precluded? In the coroner's report, and I'm going to quote this in its entirety. It is for the reasons outlined above that Alan, the survivor, the Kingsmill families, and others have called on the Secretary of State, in this case the Minister of State, to answer on his behalf to announce a full, independent public inquiry into the Kingsmill massacre. We would like to have support of a public representatives, and I believe that the coroner's finding has reaffirmed that. That's what we've all known for years. There's many people in the province, Mr Deputy Speaker, who seek justice. Our family seeks justice. The Kingsmill massacre families seek justice. And there has to be a day of reckoning. I certainly would like to see that day of reckoning happening in this world. And the coroner's finding reaffirmed what we've all known for many years. And that is, and the families, and that is all, and the families are asking for more. And I asked the Minister of State, with great gentleness, but firmness, you know I'm doing that, and in a way that hopefully to underline that the Kingsmill massacre, the family deserve more. And I very, very humbly asked, Mr Deputy Speaker, for that inquiry, that justice, that public inquiry, those questions to be answered for them today. Thank you very much.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I am glad to respond to today's debate on a subject which is, as ever, as we've seen, a very painful and difficult subject matter. I want to recognise, the government recognises, that the victims, as my honourable friend for Strangford has shown, they are people who feel, they are people who grieve, and as my honourable friend, and he is my honourable friend, as he's vividly illustrated, the scars run deep, and the pain which people suffer even today is very great and very vivid, and we certainly recognise that. People want facts and they want justice. I'm extremely grateful to the honourable gentleman for giving people voice today, and I think he's done it with great skill and authenticity and passion. I think it is worth saying, if he will allow me, I hope he will forgive me, he is a strong and courageous man, I know that. Yeah. And, you know, I feel myself the passions which I feel I reflect some of the passion that he does, even though I can never quite feel it. You know, I lived through the Troubles as a boy and then as a young Royal Air Force officer in the 90s. Since I was on fast jets, I was never posted to Northern Ireland, but I did have to check under my car every time I got it in the 90s. People were shot dead, people who perhaps looked like me because we had our short hair and just looked military. And I have not suffered the losses as he has suffered the losses. And I think it's with great humility, therefore, that any of us who had any reason to consider the Troubles and what they meant, I think we all, in great humility, have to acknowledge the suffering of those who lost those they loved. And indeed, we have to acknowledge the contribution of those who served to defend us from great evils, which he has elaborated. I hope today I'll be able to answer his questions. We're extremely grateful to him for advanced sight of his remarks, and I believe I'll be able to satisfy him in at least some regards, and if I'm not able to, I'll be glad to meet with him and discuss matters further. I'll come first to the findings of the inquest. The Kingsmill murders, in which the Provisional IRA shot dead 10 Protestant workmen and left one severely injured, is an appalling example of the pain and suffering inflicted on civilians during the Troubles. We must never forget that it was the civilian population who suffered most in terms of lives lost from that period of violence, with close to 1,900 people killed. The victims and families of Kingsmill, including the sole survivor of the attack, Mr. Alan Black, have fought for many decades to get information and accountability from those responsible. The coroner, for the inquest, delivered clear and detailed findings, including that Kingsmill was a horrific and overtly sectarian atrocity committed by the IRA under the authority of the Army Council. The attack had absolutely no justification. That the attack had been planned well in advance, an attack of such scale required a significant amount of planning. That the attack occurred in the aftermath of and ostensibly as a response to the Reevey and O'Dowd murders, but the reality is that it had been planned long before they took place. That the rumours concerning the involvement of Captain Robert Nyrek in the Kingsmill attack are entirely false. I'd like to quote from the Judicial Communications Office. The coroner was entirely satisfied that Captain Nyrek had no role whatsoever in the Kingsmill atrocity. He said, "Captain Robert Nyrek was a highly decorated soldier, and his memory is ill-served by those who persist in rumour-mongering concerning his involvement in Kingsmill. Moreover, the false accusation serves to distract from the proper attribution of responsibility for those who carried out the attack. Rumours concerning the involvement of Captain Robert Nyrak in the Kingsmill attack are entirely false. That the attack was, at least in part, planned in Ireland. The border between Northern Ireland and Ireland was exploited by terrorists and allowed for planning, training, organisation, weapons storage and retreat at a safe physical and legal distance from the authorities that would be faced with investigating terrorist acts in Northern Ireland. Despite these findings, Mr Deputy Speaker, I acknowledge with regret that there will be some unanswered questions for the families. That is unfortunately often the case in what are complex, sensitive and decades-old Troubles-related cases. One of the key reasons that such questions remain unanswered in this case is what the coroner described as the absence of any disclosure or evidence from those who caused the deaths. The coroner said that the inquest did not receive disclosure from any individual concerned in the attack, nor their organisation, nor their political representatives. In fact, numerous calls to assist the inquest were met with silence. As a result, despite the savagery of this attack, the coroner found there has been no acknowledgement by the IRA of the utter wrongness of this atrocity, its impact on those bereaved, or the damage caused to the entire community. And Mr Speaker, as we look forward to an amazing opportunity, a period of opportunity for Northern Ireland ahead of us, with the executive restored and performing extremely well, I think it has to be said that as we move towards reconciliation, there's a great role to be played for people who have the opportunity to express contrition and remorse. It's extremely difficult to forgive someone who claims that their actions were necessary and that they were soldiers in a war. They were not. They committed acts of terrorism, as this incident clearly illustrates. So I would encourage everyone involved to express contrition and remorse, seek forgiveness, and help Northern Ireland to move on. I think it's in everybody's interests, whatever their view on the constitutional question. He asked me about the Ombudsman and letters of comfort. In relation to the police Ombudsman, to address his point about the work of the Ombudsman, I'd like to provide a clarification on what investigative bodies are still able to deliver. Section 38 of the Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy and Reconciliation Act 2023 specifically prohibits the commencement or continuation of any Troubles-related criminal investigation from the 1st of May 2024, apart from those which will be conducted by the ICR-IR. This remains the case for all investigative bodies, including the Police Ombudsman for Northern Ireland. In the Legacy Act commencement regulations laid yesterday, we included a transitional provision to clarify that in cases where an investigation had been completed prior to yesterday, the 1st of May, and only final administrative tasks remained outstanding, which may, for example, include activities such as report writing, family engagement and publication, they may be retained and completed by their original owner. But no further investigative work may now be done except by the ICR-IR in relation to Troubles offences, and that includes by the Ombudsman. The transitional provision, I'll just make this point and then I will. The transitional provision applies to anybody which had such outstanding final administrative tasks on the 1st of May 2024, including Operation Canova, the Police Service of Northern Ireland and the Police Ombudsman for Northern Ireland. And I give way.
Thank the Minister of State for giving way. Minister of State, the issue for the families is that they're aware that the Garda Síochána had information that would have been pertinent to this atrocity, this massacre of 10 innocents. I think the question that they're asking, the question I'm asking as a Member of Parliament here today, and hopefully you as Minister of State can respond to, in light of the fact that evidence which wasn't available before, which is available now, and could have a determining impact upon this decision, is it possible? I know I also asked for on behalf of the families a public inquiry. In fact, that when it comes to the case, that all the information, all the evidence that should have been available, that wasn't available, if it's available now, it could put a very, very different stain and different colour on what happened, and could lead to those who were responsible being made accountable.
Mr Deputy Speaker, that I'll be able to cover all of those points that he's raised as I go through my remarks. I hope, Mr Deputy Speaker, you won't mind me saying that we're not actually short of time in this debate, and I think it is worth, both for him and those watching, that I give him a proper answer. And I hope to do that, and I'll certainly take further interventions from him as we go. In relation to alleged on-the-run letters in the hands of perpetrators, the then Secretary of State for Northern Ireland set out the government's position in relation to the on-the-run scheme fully in her statement to the Commons on the 9th of September 2014. This followed detailed consideration of the report by Lady Justice Hallett, which was published in July 2014. In her statement, the then Secretary of State was clear that the on-the-run scheme was at an end and that there was no basis for any reliance on letters received by so-called on-the-runs under the scheme. During legislative passage of the Legacy Act, the government again confirmed this position. Now, I don't know who or did not receive on-the-run letters, but I would say, Mr Deputy Speaker, which is a matter that I'll come on to in a moment, this would now be an operational matter for the ICRIR to consider. It's not something which I can elaborate further. So, I will, but I'm going to talk about the ICRIR straight away.
If the responsibility, Mr Deputy Speaker, falls on that organisation, that body, is it in order then to ask them to clarify the matter of the on-the-run letters, which quite clearly they didn't do at the coroner's report, but which the family indicate very clearly that they did happen?
Mr Speaker, I'd be very grateful if families made reference to the ICRIR. Later I shall publish a link to their website which speaks about investigations. The website, I've had a good look at it, indeed earlier in preparing for this, as I'll come on to, and I will put that link out, and I'll email it to him as well so he can share it with people. But yes, they should certainly make a reference, and I hope that the ICRIR will feel able to satisfy them, but he will know that they are independent of ministers, and it is not a matter therefore for me, it is a matter for the commissioners. I believe that members of this House will share in the government's disappointment that the inquest could not obtain the cooperation it desired from those it implicated in or with knowledge about the atrocity, and who may have been able to provide additional information for the families involved. The government has long recognised that truly effective information recovery requires the cooperation of the various different actors during the Troubles. This is exactly why the new Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery is supported by both a legislative requirement of full disclosure by the state and powers to compel individual witnesses to provide evidence. I'm pleased that the ICRIR has commenced its functions on the 1st of May as expected. Those powers mean that the Independent Commission will have the tools it needs to obtain as much information as possible for individuals and families. In fact, the Northern Ireland High Court recently found the disclosure powers held by the Commission to be not only compliant with the state's international obligations, but capable of being an improvement on current mechanisms, including inquests. Individuals suspected of holding information that might be pertinent to a review by the Commission will now be required to cooperate with the Commission or risk a significant sanction. Refusal to comply with a notice of disclosure by the Commission is subject to a penalty notice of up to £5,000. I'd like to turn to some remarks by Peter Sheridan, the Commission for Investigations, in an article released by PA titled "Chances of Prosecutions from New Legacy Body Vanishingly Small." Mr Sheridan said, "I have heard across the board about how justice stops on the 1st of May. Actually, he said, if people read the information, the opposite is true." He went on, "I, as the Commissioner for Investigations, have the ability to do criminal justice-style investigations and report to the prosecution service, either in England and Wales or here in Northern Ireland, where we find evidence available." He further in the interview said, "I want to be absolutely honest with victims and survivors on what is a vanishingly small possibility around criminal justice prosecutions. Not that there still isn't hope, not that there isn't still hope. There could be evidence available that is enough to prosecute. But he also explained, if you take Canova, £40 million, 8 years' work and no prosecutions. So, he said, we have to be honest with people of what's achievable about cases that are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. That is the situation we face, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and why we have instituted the commission. They will also have the opportunity, the Commission will have the opportunity to engage in culpability investigations, because I know he and the families are keen that people should be named. I just want to touch on this, and these culpability investigations are described on the website. I understand my honourable friend's concern regarding the naming of individuals, and it is important to note that such considerations must take into account many issues, including judgments regarding the safety of life. Such considerations will remain relevant as this process moves forward. The ICR-IR will seek to establish all the circumstances of the death or other harmful conduct, using its full range of statutory powers, including the ability to compel witnesses. The Commission will, at the conclusion of its review process, write a final report, making findings on the balance of probabilities regarding issues such as who and what was to blame, and importantly, answering specific questions asked by families where that is possible. I have to say, though, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the actual content of reports is an operational matter for the ICR-IR. It is independent of ministers, and that is right and proper. I am very confident that there are many people out there who would not believe ministers if we spoke, and it is really important that the ICR-IR is independent. So I would encourage people to look at the website. I'll tweet out the link later, and I hope he'll feel able to share it with families. I turn then to the Irish Government. One of the coroner's other key findings, the exploitation of the border in the planning, execution or aftermath of criminal activity. It happened not just in this case, but throughout the entirety of the Troubles, and it is, as he's indicated, well established. As members, particularly honourable gentlemen, will know well, the number of Troubles-related cases in which criminal activity is suspected to have taken place across jurisdictions are many. For individuals and families who are the victims of such cases, effective information recovery will require the provision of information by the authorities in Ireland. This includes the Omagh bombing, where the UK government continues to press the Irish government to cooperate fully with the inquiry and to, if necessary, establish similar processes in Ireland to facilitate the full provision of answers for the families affected. And I certainly repeat that invitation to the Irish government today. They are very welcome to establish processes for cooperation with the Commission, very much to the end that the honourable gentleman pointed out, where they have got information which could help in the process of information discovery and reconciliation. I would certainly encourage the Irish government to work with the Commission to that end. The Irish government has to date declined to commit to cooperating with the Commission to help facilitate the provision of information to families who request it. The government is hopeful that the recent Northern Ireland High Court judgment, which found the Commission to be operationally independent from government and capable of conducting reviews in accordance with the state's obligations under Articles 2 and 3 of the ECHR, we hope that that will lead to further engagement by the Irish government with the Commission. Indeed, the approach taken by the Irish government to cooperate with the Kingsmill inquest, where the coroner expressed gratitude for the cooperation of the Irish authorities, should act as a useful template for future cooperation with both the Omagh bombing inquiry and the ICR-IR. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would like to just put on record that the relationship between the UK government and the Irish government is today one of robust friendship. We are friends and partners, we're not rivals or opponents, and we're going forward together in a spirit of constructive cooperation across a wide field. And I'm proud to have played some small part in making that possible. And I think that this would be a great time for our two nations to cooperate on issues of the past in some detail and to help lay to rest various suspicions or to expose wrongdoing, and through doing so to make progress. Of course, I give way.
Mr Deputy Speaker, again I thank the Minister of State for that very positive outlook for the future. As a result of this adjournment debate today, on behalf of the families who lost their 10 loved ones and also the survivor Alan Black, can I ask that maybe this answer perhaps in the correspondence and what has been said here could be conveyed to the Irish, the Taoiseach down south and the necessary minister, because with the request that we seek that justice for the Kingsmill massacre families and to ensure that they can feel that their case after 48 years will be answered.
Mr Deputy Speaker, I'll be astonished if the Irish Government is not following this debate live. And, we have friends in the Embassy of Ireland and in the Government of Ireland, people whom we respect and with whom we wish to go forward, continuing to develop our friendship and our cooperation. The relationship between the UK and Ireland is fundamental. It is fundamental. I think for too long we've failed to look west. We should have done. And as it's often said, one of the problems we face is that the Irish never forget their history and the English never remember. Well, I think we need to make the effort to remember, and I think we need to make the effort to go forward as friends in a spirit of cooperation. But it's precisely because we respect Ireland and respect their status as an independent nation making their own choices that we can really only plead and encourage and invite them to join us in working with the ICR. He did make the case about Angada Shikana and why were they not forthcoming. I would just say that will have been heard by the Irish Government, and I think he makes a very strong and powerful case there for further cooperation. They will, I'm sure, have records which may assist in answering the kinds of questions which he raises, and I think it's actually in their own interests to defend their own excellent reputation, but to defend themselves that records should be shared, and I certainly wish to offer no criticism. I believe, Mr Deputy Speaker, that I now come to a closing. I'd like to express my sincere hope that the conclusion of the long-running Kingsmill inquest will bring some form of comfort to the families affected. Where questions remain, I urge the families to make use of the powers of the new Commission in seeking answers to those questions. Led by Sir Declan Morgan KC and staffed by dedicated individuals experienced in working on legacy and reconciliation issues, the Government has full confidence in the ICR-IR's ability to deliver for victims and survivors, including those affected by the awful, appalling, unjustifiable actions of the IRA at Kingsmill in January 1976.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. Has anyone like to say aye? Aye. You know, I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.
The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended. The proceeding has ended.